Welcome everyone to another episode of WarThunder Histories. Today we're looking at the iconic North American F-86 Sabre. As always, we'll be talking about the design and development, its incredible service history, and how some of the variants perform in-game. I hope you enjoy. By late 1944, with North American already having designed the iconic P-51 Mustang during World War II, which had seen combat against the first German jet fighters such as the Me-262 made by Messerschmitt, North American proposed the XF-J1 Fury to the United States Navy, sharing a number of design features with the P-51 such as a straight wing, similar tailplane, and bubble canopy. The XF-J1 made its maiden flight on the 11th of September 1946, and 100 were ordered into production. However, the order was trimmed down to 30 and now designated the FJ1 Fury. They were delivered in October of 1947 and primarily used for testing and evaluation. On the 10th of March 1948, a Fury landed aboard the USS Boxer, making it the first US naval jet to make a successful operational landing aboard an aircraft carrier. Sadly, due to its design not including a folding wing, it limited its ability to be stored aboard US aircraft carriers. This, coupled with a relatively slow climb rate, it was phased out in favour of the F-9F Panther in 1949. Taking a step back in time, in 1945, North American had also submitted 4 designs to the United States Army Air Force, which would later become its own branch as the US Air Force. One was selected and a contract for 3 XP-86 prototypes was granted, with XP standing for Experimental Pursuit. The new contract deleted some of the specific requirements that were present on the XF-J1's development, along with some new modifications being added. This allowed for the XP-86 to be much lighter and much faster, with an estimated top speed of 582 miles per hour, which was around 40 miles per hour faster than the Fury. The new aircraft did, however, share a number of design features present on the Fury, such as a straight wing and an air intake which travelled through the body of the aircraft. Despite being faster than the Fury, it was feared that the design would have too similar of a performance to its rivals, the XP-80 and XP-84, which would become the F-80 Shooting Star and F-84 Thunderjet respectively. The XP-86 also needed to reach a top speed of 600 miles per hour, which meant it was urgent for North American to find a solution. Becoming the first aircraft to make use of flight research data from captured German aerodynamicists at the end of World War II, it was discovered that a swept wing would greatly reduce drag and delay compression issues when approaching the speed of sound. Initially, because the XP-86 had reached its final development stages, there was strong opposition to change to a swept-wing design. However, after wind tunnel testing established considerable benefits, a 35-degree sweep was incorporated. This came along with automatic leading-edge slats that would improve low-speed handling and maneuvering when at high angles of attack. The XP-86 became the F-86 Sabre, making its maiden flight from Edwards Air Force Base in California on the 1st of October 1947. The Sabre was a single-seat turbojet fighter aircraft with an ability to provide close air support. Powered by a General Electric J47 turbojet, the F-86 first set an official speed record of 671 miles per hour on September 15, 1948, and 5 years later Jacqueline Cochran became the first woman to break the sound barrier flying a Canadian-built Sabre on the 18th of May, 1953. The Sabre was able to achieve a maximum altitude just shy of 55,000 feet with a range of 835 miles, which could be extended by use of external fuel tanks. Initially, the Sabre was armed with 6 M3 50 caliber machine guns. Later, on the F-86 F2 variant, 4 20mm cannons were tested. However, it was found that when firing all 4 cannons, gases exerted from the guns could cause compressor stalls, and so it was found that only 2 guns could be used at a time, leading to them not being widely adopted. In a close air support role, Sabres were able to mount unguided bombs and unguided rockets, with some later variants of Sabre, such as the F-86 F40, being able to mount AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. The F-86 initially entered service with the United States Air Force in 1949, serving alongside its previous rivals during its development period, the F-80 and F-84. The Sabre was rushed to its first combat deployment in December of 1950 for the United Nations mission in the Korean War. This was due to the introduction of MiG-15s the previous month. Early variants, although couldn't outturn, outrun, or outclimb the MiG-15, could outdive them. This gave them a considerable advantage over the F-80s and F-84s that were quickly becoming incapable of combating the new MiGs. With the introduction of the F-86F in 1953, pilots were now more closely matched to the MiGs they were fighting. Sabres were originally credited with shooting down 792 MiGs for the loss of only 78 aircraft, giving it a victory ratio of 10-1. After the Korean War, the US Air Force changed the figure to 1.8-1 as more data became available. Of 41 US pilots to become aces during the Korean War, all but one flew Sabres. The one that didn't fly Sabres was actually a Corsair pilot, believe it or not. Due to the speed of which the jet age developed, the F-86 became quickly outdated, and the US Air Force transferred the bulk of its Sabres to the Air National Guard after the Korean War. These served until 1970, where they were phased out of service and sold. With over 20 variants of Sabre produced by both North American and other foreign licensed companies, over 25 nations operated Sabres, notably Japan and Pakistan, who operated them until the 1960s, with Peru retiring theirs in 1979, and Bolivia, who used Sabres up until 1994. Although I can't find very much information on the Bolivian Sabres, as there's next to no information on Google that I can actually find, and anything that I can find is not very concrete from what I can tell, so I do apologise for that, and just take that with a pinch of salt. If you would like to see a Sabre in the United Kingdom, the Royal Air Force Museum Cosford has one on display. As for the US, just to name one, San Diego Air and Space Museum has one, but believe me, after looking through the list of both airworthy and static Sabres, there is a lot of Sabres that are either privately owned, some that are airworthy and will go to air shows. There's a lot of Sabres still out there. Basically, any air museum you go to in the US, you'll probably find one. So now we move on to how does the Sabre perform in game. Looking specifically at the F-86 A5, which is the first Sabre in the US tech tree, sitting at rank 5, battle rating 8.7 in, as I said, the US tech tree. With a top speed when spaded around 680 miles per hour at sea level, the Sabre is armed with 6 M3 50 caliber machine guns, as I said before. It is able to carry 2 1,000-pound bombs or 16 HFAR unguided rockets. At 8.7 you will fight aircraft such as the MiG-15s and the new Su-7B, along with MiG-17s and other Sabres such as the Japanese F-86 F-40. This unfortunately means you will have to contend with some early air-to-air missiles. Luckily for the F-86A, it's not difficult to outturn early missiles such as the AIM-9B. They have a very low G tolerance, so all you need to do is quite a steady turn or quite a sharp turn at the last minute. Unluckily for the F-86A, however, due to it being an early variant, you can only really sustain around 9G in a turn. Anything higher, you run the risk of ripping your wings, and you really don't want that in a game, because that's an expensive crash. Playing the Sabre, I found that the 1800 rounds of 50 cal is an excellent amount of ammunition, as you don't really have to be conscious of your ammunition usage, but due to the fact it's a 50 cal, 50 cals at jet tier is really not powerful enough compared to the 23mm cannons on the MiG-15 and MiG-17, or even the 20 mils on early British jets. The 50 cals are just, you need to put a lot more ammunition into an aircraft in order to actually kill it, and that's one of the serious downsides about the early Sabres at least. The F-86 F2 comes with its 420 mils, and although they jam very quickly, the F-86 F2 definitely has an edge over the machine gun Sabres. It's a significant increase in power. Due to the Sabre's performance being very optimal at sea level, you should try and avoid climbing above 10,000 feet, as most jet engagements anyway, even though you have a surface ceiling of like 40 to 50,000 feet, most engagements happen below 10,000 feet anyway. Another benefit of the Sabre is it has an excellent roll rate, especially when compared to the MiG-15 and MiG-17. You should use this to your advantage if you have a trailing aircraft and you're having to be defensive. From a close air support stance, the 1,000-pound bombs are excellent for anti-tank, and of course bombing bases, but be aware that you will need to rearm after you use them. Equally, going into an air RB game, you can bomb a base and then try and engage enemy aircraft, which is a perfectly good way of making RP and at least breaking even with Lions. As for the HVARs or HVARs or whatever you want to call them, I don't particularly like them, just because they're not 100% accurate and they tend to, one will go up and one will go down, and they're not an effective way of killing a tank, as I find that I normally need around 4 to 8 to be able to kill a tank anyway, and that's just to be able to hit it once. Balance-wise, the F-86 sits at a pretty good BR at 8.7, and even the F2 that sits at 9.0, you're never going to be fighting supersonic jets, and everything around you kind of has the same abilities. Nothing can really outmatch you seriously. Like when you play, for example, the Hunter F6, you're in a 10.0 battle rating, you almost always get top-tiered to fight against Phantoms, F-104s, and the Sabre doesn't suffer that same fate. In general, guys, the F-86 is a very comfortable aircraft to fly. It's a very easy aircraft to learn to fly as well, especially when compared to a very sluggish F-84 and a very sluggish F-80 that you come before. The Sabre is just a lot more forgiving than those aircraft, and it's a lot more forgiving than the F-100. The F-100 will try and kill you constantly, especially at low speed. The main thing to consider is when you're in the Sabre, you should maintain as much speed as possible, because the slower you get, the more sluggish you get, and a slow jet is a dead jet. And the only other thing on top of that is, don't overspeed. If you overspeed, you will probably lock up and compression becomes an issue. So, I mean, obviously you're never really going to get to Mach 1 in a Sabre unless you're in a significant dive. just try and maintain any speed between 300 and 600 is generally the best area, especially for the A5 from my experience. Obviously, with multiple variants in game, every Sabre has its own little unique changes. Some of them can pull up to 13G for a short amount of time, some of them can pull, only 8 or 9G, such as the F-35, and, obviously the F2 has cannons, and you've got variants of Sabre Dog, which are the modern Sabres with afterburning engines and radar. As I say, every one of them is ever so slightly different, so you've got to learn each one's individual traits, and you'll learn how to play them quite quickly, as, in general, as I say, they're all pretty much similar and on par with each other. Overall, there are 4 US Sabres, 3 German Sabres, 3 Japanese Sabres, 2 Chinese Sabres, 2 Italian Sabres, and 1 French Sabre. As I say, there is a lot of Sabres in this game, and to be quite honest with you, they are pretty evenly matched across the board. Obviously, some of them have missiles, some of them have radar, some of them have afterburners. As a general rule, though, they are pretty much the same aircraft, and especially when you get into games with a number of them, it comes a lot more down to skill, so learning your aircraft is quite important in this case. Just before we end here, guys, I'd like to quickly thank Wolf, Creeper, and Golden for helping me get this footage together. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If there's a vehicle you'd like to see featured in the series, please leave it in the comments section below. If you liked the video, please consider leaving me a like and subscribing, or leaving me a dislike if you didn't like the video, by all means. And thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.